Welcome to the Manifestation Method. I'm your host, Ayelet Polonsky, therapist, coach, and Jewish neo-shaman. Here we blend the wisdom of psychology, spirituality, and Kabbalah to empower you with tools for living your most authentic life, filled with love, abundance, and healing. Through somatic, narrative, and hypnotherapy, I've developed the Manifestation Method to guide your soul's transformation and the realization of your true self. Let's rise together. To dive deeper into manifesting your most authentic life, visit ayeletpolonsky.com. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Manifestation Method podcast. I am really excited about today's episode because we are talking about friendships. And I really think today's episode is one that so many of you are going to resonate with because we're diving into a concept that can absolutely transform your life when you really understand the following. And that is, your tribe creates your vibe. Your tribe creates your vibe, okay? Let's take a moment and understand what I'm trying to say, right? Let's face it, you are a product of your environment. And we all inevitably become like the handful of people that we surround ourselves with on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Right? So it's
a real reflection too. I think it's important to say, like, we all obviously have our innate gifts and innate genius, but we are so influenced by the people that we're around and vice versa. Like, we're always influencing and being influenced.
Totally. And even like there's Kabbalistic resources that say, or sources that say, nobody is so holy or so evolved that they are exempt from getting impacted directly by their environment and the people in it. Okay, so even an enlightened master, no matter how much inner work you've done, which I don't know that any of us qualify to be at that level where we can be in an environment and not somehow have our energetic antennas out where we're taking in information constantly. So your inner circle, or what I like to call my tribe, has a direct impact on my vibe, and my vibe being the energetic signature that I'm carrying in every moment. And that energetic signature has a direct impact on the life that I'm manifesting for myself. It just is what it is. Okay.
It's a ripple effect. It's like a walking ripple effect that we all carry.
Totally. And it puts out antennas. There's actual it's like we have these like energetic antennas that absorb information, both consciously and unconsciously, right? Our unconscious is absorbing so many bits of information in every given moment, right? And so how much more so when we surround ourselves by the people that we spend the most time with, and then it can be family members also are included in that. But, right now we're talking about friendships, right? Because there's something that happens, or that's happening now as we enter into this new paradigm where I'm seeing more and more with the clients that I'm working with directly, that it's like they feel like they're growing, they're shifting, and simultaneously they're shedding certain friendships that no longer feel aligned for them. And it's a scary process that requires a lot of courage. Right?
Yeah, and going back to what you said too with family, it's like, for obvious reasons with friendships are our chosen family. Like, we don't get to choose our family, but we do get to choose our friends. And that is, sometimes we feel like, I think we can't choose our friends. Like, this is just what we've got and we have to work with what we've got, which is true. It's important to integrate relationships into our lives, but there also has to be like a shift, which is like, we get to choose our friends, we get to create the dynamics that we want in our friendships as well, and all of that good stuff.
Totally. Like, the reason this topic is also so close to my heart is because I've literally lived it. The amount of incarnations that I've had in this lifetime, I've restructured my identity so many times. I'm kind of like a walking experiment that every single incarnation has come with it kind of like a very natural, organic shedding of prior relationships that no longer feel aligned. And thank God I've been able to do it with a lot of grace. It's not like I went to any of my friends and said, "You're not an energetic match for me anymore, so we can't be friends." No, that never happened. Right? It's just kind of this like very natural evolving process. You know, and so something that I remember needing to ask myself when I first started to see in real time, I am no longer a match for these old relationship containers, and I'm starting to even attract a whole new different type of friend into my life. I really had to ask myself, you know, I had to start thinking about the people who I'm spending the most time with, right? And I started asking myself, like, do they uplift me? Do they inspire me? And are they aligned with the person I'm becoming?
Are they safe people to go to when you are having conflict in the friendship? Like, how do they receive that?
Yeah. So that for me was a big telltale sign of like letting go of friendships from the past and entering into a new paradigm of connection. Right? Because as I started like studying communication, and I mean, I don't even think I really needed to study it. I am like, you know, like I'm like the queen of communication, you know?
She really is. She's not just saying that, guys. She really is the queen of communication.
You are my witness. You've seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, whether it's working with my team at the manifestation method, you know, and like if something's even feels a little bit off, I am so clear that we need to communicate vulnerably and openly, because if my team is not feeling aligned with the work they're doing, I'm going to feel it. Or if something feels off, then the whole machine is off, and then we're all impacted and affected. Right?
Yeah, and I think also too, we have this huge cultural inheritance with female friendships of sharing and sometimes even bulldozing each other's needs, or like venting, like, you know, when you have a friend that like you are the person that they vent to constantly, but then when you go to them, they can't hold that space for you. And it's sort of, we have this big cultural inheritance of internalizing, I think for women too, that we always have to be the ones to like sacrifice or be subject to the waves of other people's feelings or what they're going through. And we don't get the chance to share how we feel, or it's not safe to share how we feel. And also too, like, I think about all these old stories of women who are like, oh, I don't have girlfriends. Like, I only have guy friends because women are so complex and so complicated and things like that, because we're really not taught to communicate with each other in a healthy way and in a way that really creates sisterhood.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, these rifts in friendships, or like what I call them, like shedding of old relationships, you know, often can be met with real painful realizations, right? Because we don't necessarily want to let go of what's familiar. And a lot of these friendships are sometimes like based on the foundation of years and years and years of experiences together, memories. Yeah. Like there's a lot of blending there that becomes very hard to unblend from.
Yeah, and even deeper, like what you're saying, it's reaffirming old stories too. Like the familiarity reaffirms old stories.
Right, exactly. But you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? If you are looking to level up in your life, you're looking to manifest your dream life, you're looking, even like a person who's looking to manifest financial abundance and become a multimillionaire, they see themselves as like a very financially wealthy person. You know, the first thing they have to do is go back to the basics. Who am I surrounding myself with on a regular basis? Are these people who are really carrying cognitions of scarcity or lack? Or are they like working really, 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 really hard, these 9-to-5 jobs, and thinking that like that's just the way it is and you got to work hard in order to survive, right? Like, what are these? And it doesn't mean you necessarily have to like cut off.
Or like not work hard, but you have to like suffer. Like everyone is here to suffer.
Right.
You know, and if you're not suffering, you're not doing it right.
Right. So for me, it's like really clear, like the people who I'm letting into my inner circle, right? My innermost tribe are going to be people who are aligned with my goals and dreams, who are aligned with my friendship values, right? One of my core friendship values, as I kind of keep like stepping into this new paradigm over and over again, is vulnerable communication, right? I'm not someone who has an easy time like holding on to negative energy. And if someone does something to that, like just doesn't meet me in a way that feels good, I can't keep it inside. I'm not going to attack a person for it, but I can't keep it inside. I need to know that part of my friendship dynamics involves an ability to put everything on the table in a very loving and compassionate way, right? But that we're able to express ourselves, and it goes both ways. Like I would hope my friends are able to do that with me as well, that there's an open line of communication and that we're honoring each other's boundaries, and that to me feels really safe to my system. I don't want to be holding on to resentment, right?
Yeah, I think too, for me, like one thing that I've learned, especially like now in my 30s, is really like in maturing just with my own self-growth and having that be reflected in my relationships and friendships, is something with, if I feel like there's an issue, like with what you're saying, or if there's something's not meeting me the right way, or I feel like there's a misunderstanding, and then I bring that to that person, and if they come with defensiveness or attacking or dismissing, like that is a sign for me. Like first, like sometimes you have to go through those defenses to like get to a place of understanding, but sometimes I've seen, like with friendships that I've had to shed over the years, it's like if it's only met with that defensiveness and it doesn't go deeper into like, whoa, maybe there is something that I'm doing or they're doing that is causing like just misalignment, and like we want to be aligned as friends, like that's a telltale sign for me that that relationship needs to go, even though it can be really, really hard sometimes.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to kind of, let's just also unpack for a second, like the how this relates to manifestation, because there is a science and energy when it comes to connection. Okay, so like let's start with the foundation, right? Start from the beginning. Like humans are wired for connection. We all know that, right? From a psychological perspective, we are social creatures who unconsciously mirror the behaviors, the habits, even the emotions or the emotional states of the people around us. Like that's what it just means to be human. We're energetic, we're magnetic.
Yeah.
And there's a study done from Harvard that actually tracked the health over the happiness and health of people over decades. And one of the biggest findings was that the quality of your relationships has a direct impact on your health and overall well-being. So it's not just about who you are, but who you're with, rather.
Correct.
And now from an energetic perspective, let's uncover, a little bit more deeply what we're talking about, right? So you've probably heard the phrase like attracts like, right? If this is the law of vibration at work, like attracts like. Everything is energy, including our thoughts, including our emotions and our beliefs. And when you are vibrating at a certain frequency, whether it's a frequency of joy or love or even fear, you will naturally align with the people that are on the same wavelength, right? And so it's important to, yes, we are responsible for our own energetic frequency. What is the vibe that we're putting out? But it doesn't help when we're feeling low that we're surrounding ourselves with a group of people who are also really feeling low. And then we all just kind of like,
and reaffirming those low vibrations.
That's exactly right. And it's actually a known thing. It's a known thing that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Okay. So if you think about it, just take a moment and think about who are your 5 people. Okay. What are they like? And how are they shaping the way that you think, feel, and act? How do they make you feel when you're around them?
Do you have triggers come up with them that you don't necessarily like? Or are there certain reflections that you don't necessarily like? Are there reflections that you really do like and really do resonate with?
Yeah. So it's like a real way to, it's important to also kind of be able to tell how can I assess when I'm outgrowing a certain friendship or a group of friends, right? Because there is an initial feeling of discomfort when it comes to spiritual growth, or there really
Yeah.
can be. So if you've ever felt out of sync with your friends, right? Maybe the conversations that once felt fulfilling now kind of feel draining. Maybe you're finding yourself in conversations with these friends, like feeling like, oh, what they're talking about just feels really superficial or just not in alignment with the things I want to be talking about.
Right.
Right.
Or you feel bored or not seen when talking to them.
Or you feel bored or not seen. Exactly. Like, or maybe you're holding yourself back. You're not sharing your new dreams or your spiritual practices because you're worried about judgment. You know, we have, you know, I have like a really, really precious client who I really love. And she came to me one day sharing how she was walking down New York City. We started doing manifestation work together, and she really started shifting her energetic frequency and getting into the mindset of anything is possible and dreaming big and really stepping into the new paradigm. And she was walking around New York City with a friend of hers. And my client was sharing with her friend her vision of one day living in one of these brownstones in New York City, like a 3-story brownstone. And her friend literally responded with, like, are you out of your mind? Like, you need to come back down to planet Earth. You're dreaming way too big. It's never going to happen. Like, stop with all your manifestation nonsense. Right. And like, this client came to me literally in shambles over this conversation. She's like, why can't I just get support from my friends? And it was a real aha moment for her to recognize, oh, this isn't rejection. This is evolution, right? As she was growing, she realized that it was natural for her to start feeling like she's shedding old skin, right? Think of a snake.
And also limiting beliefs, like this friend could have been a physical reflection, a physical manifestation of those limiting beliefs that needed to fall away.
Absolutely. And so this shedding is a really important part of the process. It's like if you think of a snake shedding its skin, or the butterfly leaving its chrysalis after being a caterpillar, right? Growth often means leaving behind what is no longer a fit. So some things to kind of think about as like practical questions to mull over, that might give you a sign that you're outgrowing certain friendships or certain circles are, one, it could be that negative energy or gossip dominates your interactions and you're just not a yes for that anymore. It could be you feel like you have to dim your light in order to fit in, right? It could be that, right? Oftentimes we see like you're, you know, I kind of,
or just feeling you can't be yourself, like you can't be yourself with these people.
Exactly. Which I'm not a fan. I used to do this. I used to try to like contort myself to fit into certain social groups and circles. And now I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's so many people in the world, like so many people in the world that like my light gets to be big enough to like attract other people who have big lights. I don't need to dim my light in order to fit into certain circles. It's not of interest anymore. And that's like also very freeing.
Living proof that you can be your full self.
You can be your full self. It's so freeing to not try to like be a try to be a circle inside of a square hole, right? Like it's just how do they say it? Whatever the metaphor is, right? There's something, you know. And another thing you can kind of start to contemplate is, are you hesitating to share your interest or your new dreams or your personal growth breakthroughs with these people? If there's resistance to sharing your growth or your new interests and dreams with your friends, like that resistance is full of information telling you like something's not aligned here, you know? Oh, and I also want to just share this because I think it's important. It's okay to grieve old friendships.
Absolutely.
It's okay to feel sad about like kind of walking away or leaving behind people who were a part of your journey, right? But also remembering that at the same time, every ending creates space for a new beginning, you know?
So true. It's so courageous walking away from old friendships. And sometimes it can be really hard to muster up the courage to even do it, because there is a natural space when you leave one friendship or one friend group even, and go into like finding your tribe. And I think we do know that, even if it's like subconscious. So that's why it can be scary to kind of jump off the cliff or graduate from a certain friend group. What are some, I guess, tips or words of encouragement to give to people who are in that space, the in-between space, or knowing that they have to make the jump in order to manifest these new aligned friendships?
Yeah, good question. I would say that before making any external changes, because it can feel, if you're just listening to this episode and you're like, wow, a lot of this is really resonating with me, I just don't really know how to make that step. We're not telling you to like amputate anything overnight, right? Sometimes
or cancel anyone,
right? These things can take time, and sometimes there's just an organic, natural shedding that happens without force. But also while you're doing some internal housekeeping, I think it's important to ask yourself a few questions. One can be, what beliefs or fears are keeping me tied to this group or to this friend, right? So like, what is the bond there that is keeping you tethered to this person? Another thing you can journal about is, am I afraid of being alone if I release relationships that no longer serve me? Right. So perhaps you're staying in these friendship dynamics because you're afraid that you're gonna end up alone, or that nothing better is gonna come. Right. So even
a big one. Is this is just how it is? Like the belief of like, this is just how it is with friends, or this is just how it is with female friendships.
Right. Which I just hate that phrase. Like, oh, it's just what it is. This is just how it is. No, it's that you're accepting it and believing that this is how it has to be. And so it's about taking responsibility. If this is how you're choosing for it to be, then know that there is a responsibility piece and you're choosing it. But it doesn't always have to be that way. Nothing has to be the way it is. We are co-creators, and we have the magical ability to change our entire reality. And again, sometimes these things take time. It takes a lot of deep internal housekeeping and introspection, but I know for me, when I started to feel like, ooh, something about these friendships they make me uncomfortable. Like, it just does not feel like it's like I get to be my full self here. I had to really ask myself, like, what am I afraid to admit about my desires for deeper, more aligned connections? Right? There was something that I was afraid to like.
Big one.
It's a big one, but the truth is, we attract relationships that mirror our inner state. So if you're surrounded by scarcity, fear, or complacency, it's really worth asking, where am I holding those energies within myself? And so,
and I think too, like it's also kind of a rude awakening sometimes when we are growing through friendships, where, like, for example, with the client, where her friend was literally like a living example of like her old limiting beliefs of, you're dreaming too big or you're asking for too much. And sometimes too, that can be like really scary to look at and be like, whoa, like I've been keeping myself small for so long and I didn't really realize it until now. Like, I would maybe have accepted that before, but because I'm on a new path of spiritual growth and spiritual awakening, like I'm not accepting these kinds of beliefs anymore. And then that can just be like the most scary thing of like, whoa, like if I've grown this much, like how much more can I grow, first of all? And also, like, how much more do I need to shed?
Yeah. It can be really scary. It can be really uncomfortable, but it's also a really awesome sign that you are coming out of a new cocoon, that you are really ready to shed something old and accelerate or ascend or transform, rather, into a more aligned version of you. And I promise you, on the other side of this, like, if I take a look now, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. My friendships from childhood, I still love and I still adore. I had a really close, tight-knit group of female friends growing up who, on birthdays and on occasion will check in with one another, and they're an amazing group of women. But there's a certain frequency And there's nothing wrong with that group of women at all. But there is something about the frequency of connection and relationship that I'm now calling in. Like the conversations I'm having with my girlfriends now are just so much deeper, so much more full of like life and richness. And they just, I don't know, I leave my interactions with my soul sisters now feeling like I went to the spa. Like even just a conversation with my friendship circles now, with my innermost tribe, just feels like I got my full, like my fill of connection that my system needed, because there's so much depth and love to these, and safety. It's like it really feels safe in these connections, you know? And so for me, like a journal prompt that I think could be really powerful, or rather for everyone listening, is this, right? If my friendships were a garden, what would I pull out as weeds? What would I nurture to grow? And reflect on this, right? What is ready to be released and what is ready to flourish?
Give us some examples.
Okay, so for example, judgment. Like I remember when I went through my own little personal judgment detox, and it was like years ago when I was in Israel and I was studying the rules of what's called Lashon Hara, which means evil tongue in Hebrew. And so it's a whole idea that, from a Jewish or Kabbalistic perspective, we're not allowed to ever speak ill about another person or ever speak negatively. And there are tons of nuances to these rules and laws, because what we think might be speaking negatively about, or we might think we're not speaking negatively about someone, right? We might just think, oh, we're just sharing a truth. This is just who they are. I'm not judging them. This is just who they are, right? But the person who's listening to what you're sharing may interpret it as a judgment. And then they might be judging that third person negatively because of something you shared. So there's so many. So one thing, when I went through my own like gossip detox, judgment detox, I felt myself really cleansing of like years of judgment that I was carrying about myself, right? Because we're all mirrors. Judgment I was carrying about myself, and inevitably then the judgment I was projecting onto other people. And what ended up happening is when I'd come back to my friendships and get into conversation, they would just start yapping away judgments about everyone. Like it was not even on their radar to not be judging. Like we're so desensitized from judgment that it becomes like the norm, just gossiping about other people. And it started to really eat at me. Like when I would hear them talking negatively about anybody, it's like my whole system would contract. So that was one thing that for me, I had to really pluck like weeds out of my garden, right? My friendship garden.
Yeah.
Was either I had to set a clear, loving boundary, like I really like honor that you feel a certain way about a certain person. But for me, like I'm going through a ritual type of process where I'm detoxing judgment, and it's just not aligning with me anymore to like speak this way about people. And either they honor that about you, or maybe it means something needs to be plucked there. And so what was being replaced, what I was replacing that garden with, what I was replacing the weeds with, were not just thoughts of positivity, but really giving people the benefit of the doubt, right? So if someone did something that I would once normally judge them for, I would replace it with really giving them the benefit of the doubt, and almost kind of telling myself, I'm not in their shoes. I'm not living their life. I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. It might not be how I choose to do things, but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that they are just doing what they know how to do. And it doesn't mean that they're bad or wrong, so that's one example of plucking out weeds and planting something healthy in its place. Yeah.
So how can we like, this is also, we're in such a time of change, and what is the most efficient way? Like the last thing I think sometimes too, it's like our lives change so much. The last thing we want to do is change our friendships, because it's like such a sense of security. And so what is like the most efficient way to manifest either new friends, or to even like dive deeper in the friendships that we already have, and like manifest deeper relationships with the people that are already connected in our lives.
Yeah. So I think the first step really requires a courage to shift and upgrade. Like literally just start with courage, even just a willingness or a want as a desire without taking any actual action, just conjuring up the courage, because that's where the hard part comes in, right? Having the courage to shift and upgrade your tribe. That's a whole makeover in and of itself. And this requires courage because it can often mean setting boundaries with people who drain your energy. It can mean being open to meeting new people, even if it feels uncomfortable at first, right? That takes courage. And it can also mean trusting that loneliness is a temporary phase on the way to alignment. So some practices to help you call in aligned friendships, right? Before you start to just like throw everything up in the air and like end all your friendships, right? Like take one thing at a time. One thing you can do is literally visualize the type of friend or tribe that you want to attract and get specific, right? What qualities do they have? How do they make you feel? Really sit there and visualize. I've done this so many times. I'll visualize myself in the middle of a circle. I just love like circle consciousness versus linear consciousness. This like idea that we're all just able to see eye to eye and like equal participants in this like community setting. Mm-hmm. And I'll see myself in this circle and I'll see the type of people, like the quality of people, the types of conversations, the type of energy that we're all carrying together, the type of love we have for one another. I've done this so many times and I'm just constantly seeing this like manifestation in my actual 3D life of just constantly being like directed to new circles or opportunities where I keep just like bringing in more high vibe conscious human beings. Which is so cool. So visualize the type of friend or tribe you want to attract. The second thing you can do is like actually join communities or groups that align with your values. Whether it's
start putting yourself in situations where those friends would be.
Exactly. I know when I was first on my spiritual journey, a little bit before I went to India, I was in New York City and I just went on meetup.com. I don't know if that website even still exists, but meetup.com had all these different gatherings where whatever interest you had, there was an event for it, or there was some sort of gathering for it. And so like-minded individuals would come to these gatherings and it would be like meditation circles or sound baths or, right? Like there's all these different spiritual things you can go to, but it's again, back to the courage. It takes courage to put yourself out there and join some sort of a spiritual circle or a book club or, an environment.
Or even just like saying hi to someone that you kind of have banter with in yoga class.
Totally.
Yeah.
I know when I first got to Israel, I got there by myself. I was totally alone and I didn't really know anybody. And so I'd go to a lot of these like Kabbalah classes and I would just start talking to people when the class was over and making connections. And if there was a woman there that I felt I vibed with energetically, I would literally invite her out for a drink or I'd invite her out for lunch. And it's like, what's the worst that can happen? She says no, but literally everybody always said yes. And I ended up creating such a tribe for myself very quickly because I put myself out there, and also to practice authenticity, right? Show up as your truest self, right? When you are authentic, you naturally attract people who resonate with your energy. So just keep being yourself, keep doing you, and you will inevitably attract people who are vibrating at a similar frequency to you.
This is your permission slip to be unapologetically yourself.
Totally. So yeah, let's end on a high note, okay? Like what happens when you find your aligned tribe? When you're surrounded by people who uplift and inspire you, everything shifts.
And it's not an if, it is a when.
When, thank you, right? You will feel seen. You will feel understood without judgment. You will have mutual encouragement and growth. And these relationships act as mirrors for your highest potential, right? It's so beautiful. So, okay.
Lots of giggles, lots of good times.
Lots of giggles.
Equal amount of laughter as there is to growth.
Totally. Lots of time in water.
Yeah,
And
lots
bathtubs,
of times
hot
celebrating
tubs.
each other's wins and not getting jealous of each other's wins, or like the competitiveness. You know, you found the right tribe when it's like true celebrating each other's successes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as you move through your week, pay attention. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with people. Do they elevate you or do they exhaust you? Do they inspire you or do they drain you? And here's a mantra to carry with you. I am worthy of relationships that nourish my soul and reflect my highest self. And here's my call to action for you. Take one step towards aligning with a higher vibe tribe this week. Just one step. Maybe that's reaching out to someone who inspires you. Maybe it's setting a boundary or joining a new community. Whatever it is, trust that this is part of your journey. Okay? Thank you for tuning in to the Manifestation Method podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts and let's keep this conversation going. And remember, your vibe attracts your tribe. So choose your energy and your relationships with intention. Until next time, keep growing, keep shining. Here's to your rising. Thank you for joining me on the Manifestation Method. I hope today's episode has inspired you on your journey to authenticity and abundance. Remember, your transformation begins with your mindset. If you're ready to take the next step, visit ayeletpolonsky.com for more resources and guidance. Until next time, here's to your rising.